This conclusion becomes clearer still when it is borne in mind that the same writer has also admitted that there were several companions who could repeat not only 70 suwar, but the whole Qur'an, and that too with scrupulous accuracy. Without a known order of verses, Al-Qur'an could not be committed to memory. The assertion that no arrangement was followed in the case of single verses revealed at different times is so absurd on the very face of it that it hardly requires a refutation. How was it possible for anybody to commit the Holy Qur'an to memory if there was no settled order in which the verses were read? What order did the different copies follow? Or was it that each copy of the Holy Qur'an, current at the time, followed a different order, and every man who knew any portion of the Holy Qur'an and every one of the companions knew some portion followed a different arrangement? Does any evidence support these assertions, or did each reciter follow a different order? What, again, is the order of the verses followed by those who led the public prayers? Is it conceivable that a book which was so widely committed to memory, and which so frequently recited by thousands of men, existed in such an orderless state? If there were no other evidence to show that the verses in the different chapters of the Holy Qur'an followed some arrangement, the mere fact that the holy book was committed to memory by the companions would be sufficient to establish that conclusion. There are many chapters containing more than 100 verses each, and unless there were arranged in a settled order, no one could be said to have committed to memory the whole of any chapter. Take the different permutations of only 100 verses, and you will see that no two out of 100,000 men could have agreed upon one arrangement. In such a case, there would have been not one Qur'an which the companions could learn from each other, but everybody would have his own Qur'an, and no one would be certain of the correctness of what his brother recited. Moreover, we learn from authentic reports that when any person, when reciting a portion of the Holy Qur'an from memory in prayers, made a mistake or left out a verse, some one of those who listened to him corrected the mistake or pointed out the particular verse. Now, this could not be done unless the same arrangement of verses was followed by all. In fact, it was simply impossible to commit the whole Qur'an or any part of it to memory unless there was some arrangement to be followed. Chronological order could not be observed. Considerations such as the above clearly show how that some arrangement of the verses was necessarily followed. Was it the order of revelation? There is clear historical evidence that the Holy Prophet arranged the verses not according to their chronological order, but according to matter. There were, no doubt, many chapters that were revealed complete, but there were others, particularly the longer ones, that were revealed by portions. Chronologically, the verses of one chapter were followed by those of another, and hence in the arrangement of verses in chapters, the chronological order could not be observed. The practice of the Holy Prophet in such cases is clearly stated in authentic reports, as Uthman tells us in a report already quoted. It was customary with the messenger of Allah, when portions of different chapters were revealed to him, that when any verse was revealed, he called one of the amanuenses and said to him, "Write these verses in the chapter where such and such verses occur." From this it appears the place and chapter for every verse were pointed out by the Holy Prophet himself, with such obvious conclusive testimony before him. No sensible person would deny that the work of the arrangement of the verses in every chapter was done by the Holy Prophet himself, and as the Holy Qur'an tells us, as it was done under the guidance of divine revelation, and the arrangement did not follow the chronological order of the revelation of the verses. No change was ever introduced by Uthman or anybody else. If the arrangement of verses was different from the order of their revelation, the next question that arises is, was the arrangement different from the one upon which the whole Muslim world is now agreed? We must answer this question in the negative. The arrangement of the verses in the Qur'an we have in our hands is not in accordance with the order of revelation, and hence, if there is no trace in the history of Al-Quran of any change having been brought about in the arrangement of its verses at any time, the conclusions that the present arrangement is exactly the same as that followed by the Holy Prophet is absolutely certain and final. Now it is admitted on all hands, and the truth of the fact has not been questioned by the most hostile critics of Islam, that there has not been the slightest change in any word or letter of Al-Quran, or in the arrangement of its verses or chapters, since the time of Uthman, the third caliph. Our copies of the Quran are admittedly exact copies, true and authentic in every way, of the copies made by Uthman, and hence to prove that the arrangement of verses and chapters at present is the same as that followed by the Holy Prophet, we have only to show that the collection made by Uthman followed the original arrangement. It can easily be seen that at the time of his making the collection, Uthman had no motive for changing the fixed arrangement, with up to the time that was followed by the companions of the Holy Prophet, that an arrangement different from the chronological order of revelation was followed by the Holy Prophet, and that the same arrangement was followed by the companions in the learning and teaching of the Holy Quran has already been shown. That arrangement that arrangement was changed by Uthman, there is not the slightest evidence to show. When Uthman began to make copies of Al-Quran from Abu Bakr's collection, thousands of companions of the Holy Prophet were still living, and no change in the arrangement of verses could have remained unnoticed. Moreover, the task of making the required copies was not in the charge of Uthman personally, but in that of several of the best-known companions, reputed for their knowledge of Al-Quran, and none of these can be shown to have had for their knowledge of Al-Quran. That can be shown to have had any motive for altering the arrangement of verses existing at the time. Nor is there the slightest trace in the historical record of the time that the arrangement was altered. No charge has ever been preferred against Uthman by any sect of Islam or any individual that he had changed the arrangement of the verses in the chapters of the Holy Quran. In fact, the only charge against him is that he disallowed certain readings, the dialects or the modes. And the nature of this charge I will describe later on. But of any alteration in the arrangement of verses, there is absolutely no mention whatever of any report, authentic or unauthentic. Positive evidence that the present arrangement is the Prophet's arrangement. Besides the negative proof cited above, which conclusively shows that at no time in the history of the Quran was the arrangement of its verses altered in the slightest degree, there is positive evidence leading to the same conclusion. This evidence may be gathered from incidental remarks made in certain authentic reports. Bukhari relates the following. The Holy Prophet said, "Whoever reads the last two verses of the chapter entitled Baqarah on any night, they are sufficient for him." Bukhari 64:12. This shows that the Holy Prophet himself followed an arrangement which he had made known to his companions, and they all followed the same arrangement. If such had not been the case, he could not have referred to 2 verses in the last 2 verses of a certain chapter. The report unmistakably proves that every verse had a known and fixed place in the chapter, which no reciter of Al-Qur'an could change. In the second place, it shows that the verses with which the second chapter now ends were also the concluding verses of that chapter in the time of the Holy Prophet, and therefore the arrangement in the copies of Al-Qur'an at present is the same as that followed by the Holy Prophet. In support of this, there is another report, on which the concluding verses of the second chapter are identified with the 285th and 286th verses of that chapter as enumerated in the present translation. According to another hadith, the Holy Prophet told his followers to recite the first 10 verses of the chapter entitled The Cave at the appearance of the Antichrist. Well, Ad-Dajjal, the great deceiver, Antichrist is a little bit too specific of a type of that, but Abu Dawood, chapter 36:13. Had there been no arrangement of verses, the first 10 verses would have been a meaningless phrase because it would not have indicated any particular 10 verses. The last 10 verses of the same chapter are also mentioned in this connection according to another report, Abu Dawood's chapter 36, number 13. A third speaks the last 10 verses of Al-Imran, the third chapter, being recited by the Prophet when he got up for his tahajjud prayers. Bukhari 65, 3:19. And tahajjud means that you rest or sleep and then get up for prayers. All these hadith and numerous other similar hadith show conclusively that the arrangement of verses in the chapters was the Prophet's own work, that this arrangement was the same as that followed now in the copies of the Holy Qur'an is shown by the absence of any other arrangement in the whole Muslim world. Arrangement of chapters was also the Prophet's own work. Conclusive evidence that not only the verses, but even chapters were arranged by the Holy Prophet himself is afforded by the following hadith reported by Anas, FB, volume 9, page 339. I was in the Thaqif embassy at the time of the Bani Thaqif's conversion to Islam. Some words left out. The Holy Prophet said to us, my portion of the Holy Qur'an has come to me unexpectedly, so I do not intend to go out until I finish it. Thereupon we questioned the companions of the Holy Prophet as to how they divided Al-Qur'an into portions. They said, we observe the following division into portions: 3 chapters and 5 chapters and 7 chapters and 9 chapters and 11 chapters and 13 chapters, and all the remaining chapters beginning with Qaf, which are termed the Mufassal. And there is good reason to believe the authenticity of this report. It divides the Holy Qur'an into 7 manzils. Oh, why didn't they include the right plural? Or portions. Each portion to be recited in 1 day. And the recital of the whole Qur'an was thus finished in 7 days. From other trustworthy hadith already quoted, we learn that the Holy Prophet enjoined his companions not to finish the Holy Qur'an in less than 7 days, and the 2 reports communicated through entirely different channels, corroborating, as they do, the testimony of each other, testify to each other's truth and authenticity. Moreover, they are both accepted by eminent collectors of hadith. Now, the hadith quoted above shows clearly an arrangement of chapters, for the division into portions mentioned in this report is observed to this day by the whole Muslim world. The 7 portions are called the 7 manzils or stages, and they include the same number of chapters as is mentioned in the hadith The 7th portion begins with the chapter titled Qaf, as stated in the report, and the total number of chapters contained in the first 6 portions is 48, as in the copies of Al-Quran in our hands. It should be borne in mind that in our copies, Qaf is the 50th chapter, the difference arising from the fact that the report quoted above, the Fatiha, or opening chapter, is not included. This report affords the clearest and most conclusive testimony that the arrangement of the chapters of the Holy Quran was brought about by the Holy Prophet himself, like that of its verses, and the present arrangement does not differ in the least from the original. Now, there's people who say the preface and the last 2 chapters are part of the Quran, but like they don't number them quite the same or something. So they talk about there being like 111 chapters or some version that leaves part of that off, but they have exactly the same words and all the other stuff, so when they talk about it differently. It may perhaps be objected that such an arrangement was not possible, as Al-Quran was not complete till the death of the Holy Prophet, and verses and chapters were constantly being revealed. It is quite true that the Quran could not be said to be complete so long as the recipient of divine revelation lived, but this could not interfere with the arrangement of verses and chapters. The word Quran signified the part of the Quran that had been revealed. The report quoted above speaks of the conversion to Islam of the Bani Thaqif, which happened in the 9th year Al-Hijra, in which year the chapter entitled The Immunity, which is looked upon as the latest in the chronological order, was revealed. Maybe in the full, maybe as far as the big ones. Hence, at the time of which the report speaks, almost the whole of Al-Quran had been revealed, and the division into 7 portions, which speaks of the number of chapters in each portion, has in its favor the authority of the Holy Prophet himself. The verses that were revealed afterwards were put into the proper place in the chapters to which they belonged. Only one short surah entitled The Help, chapter 110, was revealed afterwards, and it found its proper place in the arrangement of chapters without interfering with the enumeration of the chapters as contained in the first 6 portions, as it is placed in the 7th portion, the number of chapters in which is not specified. And Talif ibn Mas'ud. As regard to the suggestion that some of the companions followed a different arrangement of chapters, is simply a misconception. The best known of these is what is known as the Talif ibn Mas'ud, or the combination of Ibn Mas'ud. The fact is simply this, that the Holy Prophet sometimes combined certain shorter chapters in his tahajjud prayer, and Ibn Mas'ud had a particular liking for that combination. But it should be borne in mind that in prayers everybody was free, as every Muslim even now is free, to recite any portion of the Quran he liked. This freedom is expressly given in a hadith, which says that the recital of the Fatiha, which is obligatory in every raka'at, bow movement, they're named after how many bows you make, although in the eclipse prayer you double up on the bowing, but of the prayer may be followed by the recital of any other portion of Al-Quran, which one chooses. Abu Dawood 234. Similarly, 2 or more chapters could be read in a single rak'at, and in some cases there were combinations of such chapters for recital in prayers. In his tahajjud prayers, for instance, the Holy Prophet used sometimes to recite 20 chapters, 18 of which were termed The Mufassal are the shorter chapters toward the close of Al-Quran, beginning with Qaf, chapter 50, and 2 Hamim are chapters commencing with Hamim. In this, each rakat, 3, 4, 2, 4, 4 is the basic, and 12 can be added thereunto. But similarly, 2 or more chapters could be read in a single rakat, and in some cases, there were combinations of such chapters for recital and prayers. In his tahajjud prayers, for instance, the Holy Prophet used sometimes to recite 20 chapters, 18 of which were termed the Mufassal, are the shorter chapters, towards the close of Al-Quran, beginning with Qaf, chapter 50, and 2 Hamim are chapters commencing with the Hamim. In each rakat, 2 of these chapters were recited, the total number of rakat being 10. The Holy Prophet made a peculiar combination, which has been preserved to us through Ibn Masud, and accordingly it is known as the Talif Ibn Masud, or the combination of Ibn Masud. Now this combination has nothing to do with the arrangement of the chapters of the Quran, nor was it followed on all occasions. This particular combination was, in fact, preserved and mentioned only on account of the peculiarity and departure from the original arrangement of the chapters. Even in the public prayers, the arrangement of chapters was not necessarily followed. One chapter and another chapter, but but which portions you choose is, Even in the public prayers, the arrangement of the chapters was not necessarily followed. On one occasion, the Holy Prophet recited the fourth chapter in the first rakat, and the third in the second, and the incident has been preserved to us and a report only because a departure was made, in this case, from the recognized arrangement. FB, Volume 9, page 36. Many other instances of the same kind are on record. It is related, for instance, that the Prophet used to recite the 32nd chapter in the first rakat and the 76th chapter in the second rakat in his dawn prayers on Friday. Now it says morning in this thing, and I'm changing some of these things because your dawn was before the sunrise. Morning people may not get that point. So the twilight before the sun rises on Fridays. Bukhari 11:10. Another hadith shows that a person had a special liking for the 112th chapter of Al-Quran, and he recited it in every rakat of prayer, following it with any other chapter that he liked, and the Prophet did not object to it. Tirmidhi 43:11. The so-called Talif ibn Masud has therefore nothing to do with the arrangement of chapters in Al-Quran. Ubay and Ali's collection. 2 other persons are named as having followed a different arrangement of chapters in the collection of Al-Quran: Ubay ibn Ka'ab and Ali ibn Talib. The case of the former may be disposed of at once, as there is no testimony worth the name which shows that Ubay followed a different arrangement of chapters. The only thing stated about him is that he placed the 4th chapter before the 3rd. If that was the only difference of arrangement, it is quite immaterial, and the error may be, in the case of Ibn Masud, be due to the reason that the Holy Prophet himself once recited the 4th chapter before the 3rd in one of his prayers. As regards Ali, he is said to have collected the chapters in the order of revelation, and there is a report stating that he did not rest after the Prophet's death until he had collected the Quran, arranging its chapters in the chronological order. The authenticity of this report has been questioned, for such a Quran was never handed down to posterity, though Ali reigned as Caliph immediately after Uthman, and according to one report, Ali himself said that the greatest of men, as regards the collection of Al-Quran, is Abu Bakr. He is the first man who collected the Quran. And You also find, comparing the Shia traditions of the text, you find the exact same text. So FB, volume 9, page 10. Besides this, Ubay and Ali were among the men under whose directions the copies of Al-Qur'an were written in the time of Uthman, and this is conclusive testimony that they were considered, and that they considered the present arrangement of chapters as the right one. So, yeah, if they considered the right one, if they did a chronological order and that sort of thing, it doesn't mean that they had a new Quran. It's that they, is a way of commenting. That was what something also said about Ali, is that he had his own Quran commentary. Why the 9th chapter does not commence with Bismillah? There is one hadith more which may be mentioned in connection with the arrangement of chapters. Ibn Abbas said, I said to Uthman, what led you to put Al-Anfal, the 8th chapter, in its juxtaposition with Al-Barat, the 9th chapter, and you did not write between them the Bismillah, thus classing these two chapters with the 7 long ones. Uthman said, it was customary with the Holy Prophet, when many chapters were being revealed to him, that when any portion of any chapter was revealed, he sent for one of his amanuenses and told him to write down those verses in the chapter where such and such things were spoken of. Now, Anfal was one of the chapters revealed early in Medina, and Al-Barat was one of the latest revealed chapters, and the subject matter of these two chapters was identical. Therefore, I believe that the latter chapter was a part of the former chapter, and the Holy Prophet died, and he did not distinctly say to us that it was a part. Abu Dawood 223. This report, far from ascribing the arrangement of chapters to the judgment of Uthman, makes clear that the arrangement of chapters was effected by none other than the Holy Prophet. It shows that, except in the case mentioned in the report, the Holy Prophet had distinctly told his companions where a verse was to be placed in a chapter, or where a chapter was to be placed in the whole. It also shows that the arrangement was effected according to subject matter by the Holy Prophet himself. In this particular case, the Prophet did not distinctly state that the Barat was a continuation of the Anfal. Therefore, the two were treated as two chapters, though the Bismillah is not being revealed at the commencement of the Barat. The latter appeared to be a continuation of the preceding chapter. It only shows how scrupulous the companions of the Holy Prophet were in carrying out his directions. And part 4 of this selection is Abu Bakr collected original written manuscripts of Al-Quran. No written collection of Al-Quran could be made while the Prophet was alive. The primary work of the collection of the Holy Quran, as shown above, was done by the Holy Prophet himself under the guidance of divine revelation. But we have seen that such collection was needed only by those who wished to commit the whole of Al-Quran to memory, and that was in reciting the whole that the arrangement of chapters was needed. Hence, though the whole Quran existed in a complete and arranged form in the memories of the companions, there did not exist an authorized collection of it in writing. Every verse and every chapter was, no doubt, committed to writing as soon as it was revealed. But so long as the recipient of the divine revelation lived, the whole could not be written in a single volume. At any time a verse might be revealed which it was necessary to place in the middle of a chapter. Hence, the very circumstances of the case made the existence of a complete written volume impossible. Such a collection became, however, a necessity after the death of the Holy Prophet. It was also needed to facilitate reference to and circulation of the Holy Word, and to give it a more permanent form than was secured to it, and its being consigned to memory. Such was the object with which the collection of the Holy Qur'an was taken in hand by Abu Bakr. The need of a written collection first felt by Umar, and by the Qur'an or reciters are meant people who had committed the whole Qur'an to memory. A reference to the report which describes the circumstances necessitating the collection of Al-Qur'an in the time of Abu Bakr confirms the statement made above. The account given by Zayd ibn Thabit soon after the death of the Holy Prophet Abu Bakr had to send an expedition against Musaylama. A battle was fought at Yamama in which the great carnage occurred among the Muslimin, and many of the Qur'an reciters of the Holy Qur'an lost their lives. Umar apprehended great danger if more reciters fell to some other battle. Straightway he went to Abu Bakr and advised him to give immediate orders for the collection of the written portions of Al-Qur'an into one volume. A greater number of the reciters of the Qur'an had been slain in the battle of Yamama. He said, and I fear that slaughter may again wax hot among the reciters of Al-Qur'an and other fields of battle, and that much of Al-Qur'an may be thus lost. In my opinion, it is absolutely necessary that thou shouldest give immediate orders for the collection of Al-Qur'an. How can I do a thing, replied Abu Bakr, which the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, has not done? But, urged Umar, this is the best course under the circumstances. Abu Bakr was convinced after some discussion, and Zayd was sent for. That was wont to write the revelations of the Prophet. Search, therefore, for the written portions of Al-Qur'an and collect it into one volume. The first impulse of Zayd was the same as that of Abu Bakr. How canst thou do a thing, said he, which the Holy Prophet, peace and the blessings of Allah be upon him, has not done? And so heavy did the tax appear to him, that at the time he thought, it would not have been more difficult for me if I had been asked to remove a mountain. But at last he was prevailed upon, began the search. Bukhari 65, 9, 20.